Jeff Paterson is brought to you by our friends over at Greta, the home of our electric watch parties. Greta is Canucks Army spot to catch the game throughout the season, playoffs, and also our place to chill in the off season. I nailed that one, Jeff.
Yeah, I think you had Alex Killorn on your mind is what happened here. And of course, a longtime member of that Tampa team. And it was interesting listening to Harm's breakdown of the Lightning. And they are a fascinating team to me because the star power and the name power, just that brand recognition is still there. Stamkos and Kucherov and Victor Hedman and Vasilevsky. But you talk about that next layer, and we've seen this, that you can't keep teams together in the salary cap era. So it's not just Killorn, Yanni Gourde, Palat, Ross Colton, Corey Perry, Patrick Maroon, like all those guys that were parts of the depth of those Stanley Cup teams. They've moved on. This is the challenge now for Tampa, is trying to replace, at lower price points and find value players that can come in and step up. But yeah, Kucherov, the one trip through Vancouver, unless somehow these teams were to meet in the Stanley Cup final, and look, Stamkos getting on in years now. Every opportunity you get to see this guy, just watching him operate on the half wall in the power play, worth the price of admission. The big question for the Lightning guys, though, is Victor Hedman left the game the other night in Seattle, didn't return, and is listed as questionable for tonight. Now, Victor Hedman, who just passed the 1,000-game mark, I think we all know what he is and what he means to the Tampa team. Leads them in average ice time per game and is also third on this team in scoring. So if he can't go tonight, that is a big blow for Tampa, but also massive opportunity for the Vancouver Canucks.
J-Pat, which forward line would you use head-to-head against the Kucherov line? Because last game we saw Elias Pettersson's line go head-to-head against Sebastian Aho's line, but for most of this season, it's been the JT Miller line getting the tough matchups.
Yeah, and with all due respect to Sebastian Aho, who is a terrific player, he's not Nikita Kucherov the way that Kucherov is going right now. I think they're going to start with JT Miller. That's my hunch, and I think you play to JT Miller and the fact that there's been a little bit of leakage in his two-way game here of late. The offensive numbers are all still there for him. He's contributing. He's helping this team win more than it's losing, but I do think on balance, and we've seen a few teams, Colorado, Vegas, top teams in the NHL, they've kind of had their way in terms of the matchup game. So we'll see. But I think you look at JT Miller, a former member of this Tampa team. I think that probably, gets him fired up, even though he's done this a few times since the trade. But you look over and he's still got some friends on that side. And I think you appeal to his professional pride and challenge him. He's number 2 in scoring, but the guy that he's trailing is the guy that ultimately the Canucks are going to have to stop here tonight. So I think that I'm expecting it'll be the Miller line. Now, with Nils Höglander there, that's a different wrinkle because we know that it's still a work in progress as well as he's played here. And I love the fact that he seems to have gained the coach's trust and, was out there late in the game the other night against Carolina, protecting the lead and diving in the neutral zone to be disruptive and break up plays and winning board battles and all those types of things. So those are all steps in the right direction for Nils Höglander. Again, that was Carolina. This is a Tampa team with, as much top-end firepower as you can find in the National Hockey League, maybe save for Edmonton. So big challenge there if Nils Höglander is part of the group that's asked to do that. What I've liked about this coaching staff, though, of late is they seem pretty malleable. And if the Miller line's not getting it done, then, don't stick with it. Go to plan B, and that's Elias Pettersson, and we've seen that he can handle the two-way game. And I thought it was fascinating the other night, guys, the fact that the Canucks milked a 4-3 lead, and Quinn Hughes had 2 shifts in the final 6 minutes. That, again, it spoke to the coaching staff recognizing that this guy who's been all world for them and he's going to be again, he wasn't playing all that well the other night. Had the bad turnover that led to the first Carolina goal. The amount of hockey that this guy has played and the amount of ice time he's logged, I don't know if that caught up to him. It was an off night for Quinn Hughes. They still win the hockey game. But the fact that they didn't need to rely on him down the stretch, again, I think is showing a growth and maturity in this coaching staff that a month ago, I think they would have just played the wheels off those top-end guys and hoped for the best. Now they recognize that on some nights, look, I'm not sure that Tyler Myers and Nikita Zadorov is the answer to play the final 90 seconds of one-goal games, the rest of the way. But the other night, it was enough and it was effective. And so I think you'll see the coaching staff go into this game tonight with a game plan. But if the game plan and the game aren't going the way that they had hoped, I think there's a willingness now to move away from that game plan and be flexible to make the necessary adjustments.
You brought up Quinn Hughes looking a little bit off potentially. the back-to-back days off. You wrote about it at Canucks Army. What'd you make of that, and how do you think the team's going to respond tonight with that?
Yeah, and I think this is instructive. The fact that people in this market, maybe we're seeing a maturity is from the fan base as well, that people aren't freaking out. Quinn Hughes has 3 points in his last 6 games. Like, Quinn Hughes is not a half a point a game guy, and yet through it, the Canucks have more than held their own. But I do think some of that is just the workload catching up, the compressed schedule that they had in November. We spent a lot of time a couple of weeks ago looking at that schedule, 10 games in 17 nights, 8 different cities, all the travel. On top of that, nobody in the National Hockey League played more minutes than Quinn Hughes, and Filip Hronek was second in the entire league. So here's this compressed schedule that's taxing in and of itself. And on top of that, you've got 2 guys on your back end that log more minutes than anybody in the National Hockey League. So you can understand if at some point Quinn Hughes hits a little bit of a wall. He's human. I know he doesn't look like it on a lot of nights, but he is human. And so again, I just think, we think of Rick Tocchet, those of us that are old enough to remember as a player, this hard-nosed, tough as nails, but there is an evolution in Rick Tocchet, the coach, and he seems pretty in tune and in touch with his hockey club and what they need. And the genesis of the article was after the game against Minnesota, he spoke about how, he had intended to practice them last Wednesday after the loss to New Jersey, where they were a defensive carnival and gave up 6 goals, the most goals they've given up all year. And I think a lot of us thought, oh, this is going to be a tough practice and crack the whip. And instead, he recognized that his team didn't have it against the Devils. And instead of, hammering down, he backed off. He gave them the day off then. And then they beat Carolina. Sunday was an optional, and a handful of guys took the option to skate, but a lot of the big names didn't. And then Monday was a full team day off. So 2 full days off for a lot of the guys, particularly the stars, the ones that have played an awful lot. And I thought it was interesting that you played the clip there where he said, you can't be afraid to give your team 2 consecutive days off. Now, he said he had looked at the calendar. He thought this was something that he would have to do later in the season. So maybe he was a little ahead of the curve in that regard. Whatever the case, I think players will respect a coach that says, hey, guys, rather than me skating the devil out of you, I'm going to give you the day off. I'm going to back off here and play the long game, as he said. So, I do think that there's a lot of thought that goes into this. I give Rick Tocchet credit. Coaches love practice time. He always talks about how much practice time, this is a 5-game homestand. So they've been at home for the better part of 2 weeks, and they've had 2, by my count, official full team practices in the month of December. And here it is, the 12th. So, are there areas of their game that could use some help? Sure. But I think Rick Tocchet recognizes that a 45-minute skate, as opposed to just getting guys to stay away from the rink. And it's not even the physical. I mean, the physical is a big part of it, but the mental too, just to clear your head. I mean, it's taxing to play in the best league in the world, especially to play a key role as so many of the top guys do. So, the psychology of it is fascinating to me. And, it's interesting, just as I wrote that story, got a lot of feedback from a lot of minor hockey coaches out there that thought, hey, like, this is really interesting. This is an angle that, we've wondered about as well. Thanks for writing it. They like the input and the insight that Rick Tocchet provided on sort of his decision-making process of when to step up and when to back off.
Recently, the coaching staff has made some tweaks to player usage on the PK. We've seen JT Miller and Elias Pettersson killing a little less. We've seen somebody like Teddy Bluger killing more, especially first over the boards. On the back end, somebody like Noah Juleson, who has promising PK underlying results, starting to take on a bit of a larger role. When you look at this penalty kill, J-Pat, how much room do you think is there to squeeze better results given the personnel? What benefit can this team gain from, I guess, pushing new buttons versus, I guess, how restricted they might be just with the personnel they have?
Yeah, and look, there's been a little bit of slippage in the penalty kill. There has. And so I think the fact that Rick Tocchet and his coaching staff have these options, and that Teddy Bluger is back and now has 10 games under his belt to sort of, work through his preseason, if you will, and get up to the speed of the game that's been going on around him while he's been out. He's looked good. He's looked good at 5-on-5 on that line with Garland and Joshua. But I do think that, the first guy out on the penalty kill, and look, for all the good that JT Miller does, I think the numbers bear out that this still isn't his strong suit. And kind of like Bo Horvat when he was here, they profile as guys that should be able to kill penalties. And yet, for whatever reason, the numbers just don't back that up. And so JT Miller has other areas he can contribute. Penalty killing is hard. If you can relax his minutes so that he's fresher to attack in the offensive zone, whether 5-on-5 or on the power play, I think there's a benefit there to the hockey club if you have capable fill-ins. And I think the Canucks do with Teddy Bluger, and Rick Tocchet again this morning was talking about Dakota Joshua. You've got Sam Lafferty who can do some penalty killing. Nils Amon, since he's been called up, he's become a fixture. And I think this is really sort of to take the conversation in a slightly different direction, Harm. But Pia Suter now cleared. Like, he might play Thursday. If not, he's going to play out on this road trip. There's another guy that had promising underlying numbers as a penalty killer in the first, 15 games that he played, and then he's been hurt. So somebody's coming out of the lineup to make room for Pia Suter. Does Pia Suter become a penalty killer right away? Do they ease him back into the lineup? But I think at some point he's going to be part of this penalty kill as well. Is Nils Amon's penalty killing utility enough to keep him in the lineup? Does he slide to the wing? And are we looking at Kuzmenko or Phil DiGiuseppe as the healthy scratch? So there are some moving parts here that are going to come with Pia Suter returning to the lineup. But the upside there is that he's another option for Rick Tocchet to be part of this penalty kill that can take some of those minutes away from JT Miller and Elias Pettersson that they can allocate better and more effectively, I think, to help this hockey club. So penalty kill still very much a work in progress. And I think some of the same things apply to the defense. They definitely have missed Carson Soucy. I don't think there's much doubt about that, just how rangy and disruptive he is at the blue line, preventing entries. And, that's a big part of the penalty kill if you can turn the other team's power play back and force them to regroup and run time off the clock. So, Soucy's going to be out for a little while still, so we won't go down that road. But Pia Suter is there knocking on the door. Really interested to see what the lineup looks like. How is he utilized? And can he be a shot in the arm to this penalty kill that could, I think, use a bit of a boost right now?
Jeff, Thatcher Demko starts tonight. That surprise you at all?
No. They coming off a win the other night, Tampa, again, we talked about the top end skill there. I mean, I think these are the games that a number one goaltender wants. You want to test yourself. Tampa got a win the other night, or last time these teams played in October. Interesting to note that Thatcher Demko has never beaten the Tampa Lightning. Now he's 0-3, so it's not like he's 0-13, but has never been able to get a victory against Tampa. And of course, Tampa's been at the top of its cycle during Demko's time in the National Hockey League. So, could they have gone to Casey DeSmith? Sure. I mean, he's stepped in and provided ample goaltending when he's got the tap on the shoulder, but it just kind of feels like it's 3 or 4 games for Demko and then 1 for DeSmith. And of course, with Roberto Luongo night on Thursday, I think you're going to be looking at a night for your number one goaltender there. I'd be really surprised if Casey DeSmith got that start, although he did defeat the Florida Panthers down in Sunrise earlier in this season. So again, there are decisions to be made, but to answer your question in a roundabout way, no, not surprised. Again, I think Thatcher Demko, there's a little bit of room for him to up his level of game, and just like the guys out in front of him. And if the Canucks are going to get a win against Tampa, something tells me that Thatcher Demko is going to have his finger, or at least his glove prints, on the end result.
Yeah. So it's Luongo Ring of Honor night on Thursday night, and I don't know if everybody knows this. I'm saying it more for the listeners. I know you know about it, Jeff, but there's going to be a ceremonial puck drop with the goaltenders, and I'm sure that photo is going to be printed and put up at Rogers Arena, and with Casey DeSmith being the goaltender at center ice, that would be something. I wanted to quickly ask you about the Luongo stick bid that's going on right now at Canucks Army. Just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I'm glad you did, because time is ticking to the end of this auction, and thanks to everybody that has supported it. If you haven't seen the story, you can go find it at Canucks Army, and we'll bump it along again tonight to give it one more a little bit of push on social media. But bottom line is, Roberto Luongo gave my then 7-year-old son a stick at practice. So this is a decade ago, and my son has had it in his bedroom, and it's just kind of sat there. And as my son has aged, he's now, you do the math, he was 7 then, it's 10 years ago. Let's go with 17. How about that? The stick has found its way into storage here in our house. And we thought, you know what, there's got to be a better place for it. Like, whether it's collectors or people with a man cave, whatever, it would look good on the wall. Christmas present, a unique gift. And we tied this in with the Ring of Honor night. And so we were conducting this auction of an autographed Roberto Luongo. It was a practice use Reebok stick. You can see photos of it in the story at Canucks Army. And we just opened up the bids. And I can tell you right now, the leading bid with just over 24 hours to go is $1,000. $1,000.
Yep.
And it's all going to charity. We were very clear about this. This isn't me trying to sell a Roberto Luongo stick in the back alley around Rogers Arena. This is all going to the Canucks for Kids Fund. And we just thought spirit of the season, tied in with the Ring of Honor night, the stick that it was sitting here in storage. Clearly, there was a better use for it. So we've had some really generous bids, but none more generous than $1,000. So if you want to get your hands on this Roberto Luongo autograph stick and be the winner of this auction, you're going to have to get off the wallet and step up and come up with something more than $1,000, which blows my mind because I was hoping to, raise a couple $100 for this, and the generosity of our leading bidder right now at $1,000 with just over 24 hours to go. So the auction closes at the end of the day tomorrow so that we can announce the winning bid on Thursday, which is game day.
Yeah, and all the money's going to the Canucks for Kids funds before people come at me, say that I'm trying to pocket all the money.
Exactly.
That's been said about me before. Anyways. Jeff, thank you for doing this, my friend.
Always fun, guys. Looking forward to it. The Ducks, one of my favorite teams to watch. So this will be an incredible night tonight.
Thanks, Jeff. There he is, Jeff Paterson.
You're a wagon duck.
Yeah, I had the Ducks on the mind, man. I had the Ducks on my mind. I don't know how that happened because anyways, I'm not gonna get into it. Whatever. Anyways, Tampa Bay. That is who the Vancouver Canucks are playing this evening. Our thanks again to Jeff Paterson. Quickly on the goaltenders, I wanted to quickly talk about it. I really thought this was going to be a Casey DeSmith start because I think when you look at the Canucks schedule, you're getting into that territory where if you only play him on back-to-back nights, you're going to start giving him the Jarl Halak treatment, which you don't want. But he had gone over 2 weeks before his last start. When he made his last start, the one before that had been over 2 weeks. So maybe a week and a half, whatever. It had been a while, and it had been the longest portion of the season. He came out, played great, pitches a shutout, talks about it post-game and said, yeah, like I pride myself on being that guy who doesn't have to play all the time and can just come in and give you solid goaltending whenever I'm called upon. Obviously, Casey Smith wants to play, but it's interesting to me because I thought the Canucks would want to try to get him in this game because he's not going to play Thursday. He's obviously going to play one of the back-to-backs, but he's not going to play Thursday. It's like Jeff said, you've got that ceremonial puck drop with Roberto Luongo. Thatcher Demko's got the Luongo tribute on his helmet. Thatcher Demko wants to be a part of that. I'd be very, very shocked if Casey Smith starts that game on Thursday. And I don't know if I'm equally as shocked that Thatcher Demko starts tonight. I think probably a fine move, but I think if it wasn't Roberto Luongo tribute night, you would start Demko tonight and without even thinking about it, you put DeSmith in on Thursday. But now it looks like it's going to be 2 Demko starts and then one of the back-to-backs on the weekend. Just interesting to me.
They have the holiday break after San Jose. So they've basically got one game just to Philly between the 24th and the 31st to close out the month. And they even have New Year's off. So I'm sure the coaching staff is looking at that as well as a huge break in the schedule.
Yeah, that's true. They played the 28th after Christmas. Of course, they play on the 23rd against San Jose Sharks. They play on the 28th, and they don't play again until January 2nd. I can't remember the last time that they had a break like that for the new year because they definitely didn't last year. Last year, didn't they play on New Year's Eve?
I can't remember.
Anyways. Yeah, they did. They played Calgary. I remember because I took the night off. All right. Yes, our thanks again to Jeff Paterson. Canucks Conversation with Harmon and Quads every weekday at 2 p.m. Be sure to check it out on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. And if you missed it, go check it out on your favorite podcast catcher app.